So the next topic we are talking about, let's go hand in hand, and the way AI is changing the marketing world out there for better, hopefully, the digital marketing world. So sending out the right message at the right time has become a challenge. Everybody hopes for AI. Everybody hopes that it's going to be the solution. We just heard from Google that machine learning is also taking a big part in their strategy against that fraud. But now we have some other people coming up on stage, and they will see what the needs for human marketeers will be in the future, and obviously what the hand-in-hand opportunity is between marketeers and their capabilities and AI on the other hand. So let's hear and listen to what these guys are telling us. And I'm going to get the panelists up on stage. First of all, we've got the Vice President, Intel Architecture, Graphics and Software, and General Manager, Intel Software Center, Brad Branson. Please welcome him. Brad, come out. Come on, wake up. Hello. Just imagine you were on stage. What would you do when everybody said, oh, come on. Yeah, the show is not over yet. And then the second person we've got is the President and COO at Taboola, Eldad Maniv. That's much better. You're getting there. Hooray. Much, much better. And last but not least, we've got a moderator for you. He's the former CEO at Huge Inc. Please welcome Aaron Shapiro. Great. Cool. Have fun on stage.
Welcome.
Help us learn about AI.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Aaron Shapiro, and I'll be moderating today's conversation. So we hope to have a very exciting discussion today about the future of AI and marketing. AI is probably one of the biggest innovations that's hit the internet since the internet. For marketers, it's the promise of right place, right time, right message for all marketers. It has the potential for customers to have really groundbreaking personalized customer experiences. But as we all know, there's a lot of controversy around big data, whether it's privacy, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, bots seemingly overrunning every discourse that exists. So we're here to talk about the good and bad of this and how this impacts marketers moving forward. With me for this conversation are two leaders in the industry who spend a lot of time thinking about AI. First, we have Eldad Maniv, President and COO of Taboola. Eldad leads Taboola's worldwide operations, driving the product development, sales, and business development. He has 2 decades of track record building technology companies in the US and Israel. Prior to Taboola, Eldad held senior executive positions at BMC Software, Zen, and Identity Software. Brad is currently the Vice President of Intel Architecture, Graphics, and Software Group and General Manager of Intel Software Center. He's been at Intel for over 20 years and has held various positions. Currently, he oversees the company's strategic planning for software development and developer relationships. Welcome, both of you. So I'd like to start off with a little bit of a future question. If you were to imagine the world 5 years from now, it's 2025, a marketer's at a conference like this one today, what would marketing and AI look like?
Well, I think you have to consider how well we can see that far into the future. If I look back 5 years ago, I would have never imagined that people are doing the things they are now with technology. So one of the things you have to understand is that the pace of change in technology is increasing substantially. Eldad and I were talking a little bit earlier this morning. When I started university, we used typewriters. By the time I finished, we not only had word processors, but we were on a full PC and were able to do things. And so what I could say is that things are going to continue to increase significantly at a pace faster than any of us imagine. But the key is technology, historically and will continue in the future, is actually about solving problems. And so in order to understand what's going to happen with technology as it relates to marketing, is you have to start with what problems actually you're trying to solve. So technology, particularly AI, will actually help automate things today that are nearly impossible to automate. Think about it. As of today, nearly 2.5 quintillion bits of data are produced every day. That's a number with 18 zeros behind it. Now that data is a gold mine, and we hear about that, but how are you going to solve and how are you actually going to use that data in a way that can be meaningful and be turned into something that you can help with marketing and help customize experiences? So as I see the future, AI will actually help us solve those kinds of problems. It will also help us scale and do that more efficiently and cheaply. It will do things that humans just can't do today. So that's what I see happening between now and 2025.
Your perspective?
So I think I'll start with for the last 20, 25 years, I've been hearing personalization. It's all about personalization when you talk about any form of marketing. And when we look at this, quite honestly, very little has been done. So when I go on Netflix, I do see recommendations that are personalized for me. On Amazon, I do that, but very little beyond that. And when I look at major brands, they have been investing quite a bit in building DMPs, in investing in technology. But at the end of the day, what are they doing with it? Because then comes the next stage. And usually I get an automated letter that says, welcome Eldad, and that's really the phase of personalization that we're at. If we think 5 years forward, I think we should imagine a world where there's an army of marketers for every brand, an army to the point where you have a marketer per each consumer. Each consumer gets personalized, specific treatment, and that can only be solved through an artificial intelligence technology that will drive that. So I will have someone catering for me on an ongoing basis.
So from a consumer perspective, how do you think it's going to look like? Do you think everyone's really going to have their own internet, effectively? How do you think it's going to shake out?
So from a consumer perspective, personalization is great. And we've been trained to believe that with more personalization, with more internet, there's really free choice. The question is, what are we really getting? If someone is curating what I read, if someone is curating what I buy, if when I when I travel anywhere, someone decides what route I take, is this really free choice, or is this very limited choice? So from a consumer perspective, the great side is I get a lot of attention, I get a lot of information, I get a lot of personalization. I can imagine a world where I wake up in the morning, my connected mirror provides me my personalized messages that are for me, obviously powered by Taboola. My coffee machine delivers the coffee that it knows is what I want at this time of day. My car knows where to take me. All of that is great benefit. But on the other end of that is the question of, are we really getting the free choice? Or are a few technology companies getting more and more powerful in really narrowing down what it is that we choose from?
Interesting. So the implication for this is that a lot of the marketing seems to be shifting from messaging more to experience, where the AIs are starting to solve problems. Do you think that's accurate?
So solving problems is the right approach. The question is, what problems are the marketers trying to solve? They have their interest in getting their product sold, their brand delivered. There's then the technology companies who really want the full attention of users on the expense of every other brand out there. So I think it's going to be a mix of who owns that and who controls that.
So Brad, from a technology standpoint, do you see certain types of technologies that are coming out over the next few years that will enable this kind of future?
Well, we run on a cadence of increasing the number of transistors or the base level of technology, and it increases during a certain set period of time. And that's just the underlying driver companies like Intel and others drive. That's going to continue. And with that, we oftentimes don't even know what applications are going to occur. But the thing that I think is going to make a big change here over the next several years is the ability for different providers that are developing application software and solutions. It's going to become easier for them to do that as software programming models are better optimized around AI. So let me give you one example of how that might change. Today, a lot of the AI feature set is actually programmed into the cloud, and so that would be your big providers like Google and Taboola and other people like that. The roadmaps that we see going forward will be that AI capability will be developed in a part of even basic devices all the way down to from the cloud all the way into what we call our client devices. And that capability today doesn't exist end to end. but it will in the future. And so as different application providers and solution providers have that opportunity, we may see some significant changes as they think of different ideas of things to do. Let me give you one specific example that I was brainstorming before we arrived today. Today, a lot of what we do is around how marketers reach consumers. But as Eldad mentioned, that may over time actually reduce choices, things become hyper-segmented and personalized. One of the applications that may emerge as we create a potential problem with that is actually there may be platforms for consumers that are AI-related that help work around that.
Interesting.
As they have them in their individual devices. So imagine you have an application on your phone or your watch or whatever device you happen to have that actually helps you personalize and you set the rules, and that AI actually works for you. That poses a challenge for marketers and something that we'll have to work around. It'll be a very interesting world when we look at all these different AI algorithms working somewhat for and against each other.
It almost sounds like a battle of AI versus AI. You have the marketers having algorithms to target, and then you might have consumers having AI to potentially buy on their behalf or even find information that marketers might not want to put in front of them.
Exactly.
Fascinating. So in this landscape, how do you think it impacts publishers and other media companies?
So I think what Brad just said about it's really a balance of power, who has control. If we think about media, for example, and look back 100 years ago, media was controlled by powerful individuals or organizations. The concept of independent media is really something from the last few decades. This was not the case up until now. And I think what's happening right now is with artificial intelligence, with the power of the tech companies, that power is shifting back from independent media to very controlling entities. So the technology companies now control what we read. With AI, they control what exactly we experience. And media is currently being shifted into being more and more commoditized. The concept right now is for media to build their brand name, to be able to be recognized in this entirety of lack of attention and really build itself through that. So I think media is going to have to fight to get recognized. If I add to that another element of credibility, how do I know if what I'm reading is real? Is it fake? Is it really what happened? Is it what someone is really trying to make me feel as what happened? I think really these are the main challenges.
So how about the kind of dark side of AI, as you alluded to? Do you think that's going to overrun how people use the internet? How does this affect marketers? What's your take on that, the whole controversial aspects of AI?
So I'll start with the negative example, where here in Germany, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, where the first artificial intelligence crime was formally reported. For whoever didn't see it, a CEO called his finance person after meeting with the client and asked him to pay on a specific bill. And that finance person paid. But this was not the CEO calling. This was artificial intelligence software used by a crook who completely imitated the CEO's voice, the CEO's pattern, the language, everything around it. So what we're now seeing is really, I would say, bad behavior, but driving a specific environment. If I look at marketers right now, they need to live in a world where what's real, what's fake, what's credible, what's not is not there. I think the main category to try to fight for is being recognized. So branding is going to be very, very important as we go forward.
Brad, do you have a perspective on how technology could be abused? Obviously, it's not the first time that good technology sometimes can be used in bad ways.
Yeah. Well, in any technology, really from when you look back in history, there's always bad actors. Technology can be used for good or bad. I tend to be an optimist, though, and not only believe in technology, but technology put into a social context in a context where society actually adopts it, actually over time figures out ways to put controls in place, standards in place, a regulatory environment in place in order to handle that. But in my opinion, the good of technology almost always outweighs the negative side of things. The difference here with AI is the forecast for adoption, the adoption rate is very fast, very fast. And one of the things that I think we all need to ask ourselves is that is we as a society, do we have the ability to adapt quickly enough to put those norms in place so we can offset different things? Let me give you one example, though, of where there was actually a challenge with machine learning and in this particular area, and where things changed. A few years ago, we had what was called a flash crash. The finance industry had actually set up different algorithms, so machines were actually trading and acting based on some rudimentary principles of this. And there was one thing that was often we saw a significant drop in the market. It happened very, very quickly. Okay, that was the scary part. The good part is it hasn't happened again. And so we can't just trust technology. We have to trust the people that are actually building it and creating it and figuring out how to adapt to it and continuously improve that. And that's where I'm an optimist.
So how about regulation? Do you think this has a role in the emerging AI landscape? Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about data privacy and GDPR.
There's really an inherent balance between getting personalized information, getting free services, and maintaining your data. And I think this is a balance that's going to continue to be there. Am I willing to give technology companies, advertisers, other parties, e-commerce players, more information to get better service, to get better recommendations, to get free stuff? I think in that balance, this is going to continue. I don't see us saying we want ultimate privacy and give up all of this. I also think we're not going to shift all the way to the other side and say we're going to give everything. I think that era has ended and there's going to be a continuous balance. And I think figuring out that balance is very tricky. We now have governments looking at that balance. Do they have the right interest? Is the question who has enough power? Is it how to protect us as consumers? Is it power plays in general, not to give one entity too much power? I think those are the things that need to be figured out.
Yeah, this is an interesting question and one that you have to look at. The regulatory environment is not only just one entity, but it's multiple entities. I just flew in from China yesterday. I'll go back to the United States tonight. And then we have Europe. But you have emerging economies, different governments in a regulatory environment that potentially could make it very difficult to provide solutions that work in a ubiquitous way across the world. That's something that's unique with our time is ubiquity. So one of the things that I've seen work and that is to be involved with standards bodies as much as possible. This takes a certain amount of trust in different companies and entities, but if they're done right, they can involve other non-corporate actors as well. So standards bodies would be an area that would be my first priority. The second thing is the regulatory environment oftentimes in different governments, depending on your system, oftentimes lags the innovation of technology.
Yep.
And so usually you want to lead with your standards bodies, and then over time, hopefully the regulatory environment will catch up.
Yep, makes sense. So I'd like to shift the conversation back a little bit to something that was talked about earlier around this kind of battle between marketers and consumers and how AI is going to evolve. So in this context, if I'm a marketer in the future, what does that mean for me? For example, are we still going to have agencies that are going to be doing 30-second ads? Are we going to have creatives anymore? Is everything made by computers? How do you see all this shaking out?
I'll start. The way I look at it, if we look at the entire marketing channel and funnel in general, and if we think about that future where each consumer has a marketer attending to them, being an artificial intelligence, I think it leads us into two different areas where marketers have value and will continue to have significant value. One is in the creative side. I believe that in order to figure out how the human mind works, what's the impact, how to create a message, that's one area where there's significant value of people running this. On the other hand, we're going to have a lot of algorithms, a lot of data running here, and data science and optimization is the second part. And I think the middle part of running the campaign, ad ops, media buying, etc., is all going to narrow further down as these two become the main aspects where marketers can add value. And in the middle, these are going to be much more automated systems doing that.
So does this mean, you think there's still a role for creativity, or it's all going to be taken over by machines?
So creative is going to be a mix of humans and machines, but the ideas, I think, for the foreseeable future are going to be very human-oriented, whereas it's going to be enhanced by machines. I think other functions are more challenging on that front.
Interesting. Do you have a perspective, Brad?
Well, in many ways, I agree with everything that Eldad has said. I would just add to that technology solves problems, and whether it's through automation, whether it's through better analytics, and potentially we even see it on the creative side. But what marketers will get paid for, what they get paid for now, what they will get paid for in the future, is where the constraint is. So where there's a problem that can't be solved, that's where humans and marketers will have to be involved. But I would add that I think understanding data science, understanding technology and whatnot will become not only a nice to have, but it will be an essential part, a part of an education that a marketer needs to have, because they'll be able to frame up the problems that need to be solved.
Do you think it means that the future of marketers are a bunch of programmers, or you think that the tooling will get to a level where business people can start to use these things without technical expertise?
So I don't think future marketers are programmers. I think they're very creative people or very data-oriented analytics people.
I agree.
That know how to take this data, that know how to leverage that information and tune it to the right message, tune it to the right optimization. But I don't think it's going to be, if we look forward enough, it's going to be the mechanical operations of buying, of tuning manually.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
So if I were a marketer in this audience and I'm thinking about how can I pragmatically use AI today in my job, how would you think about that?
So I think the reality is that we're not too far along right now. If we look, as I said earlier, at campaigns and how marketers use it today, it's very premature. If we do look at some of what's creative and happening today, I think that there are attempts and a few starts at that. So if, for example, I look at the German rail campaign, we know that about 72% of the German population take their holidays outside of the country. And German Rail wants to make sure they are here and stay. So they built a campaign that they took images of vacations and then built, on the other hand of that, local places that are lookalikes. And then in real time, and the campaign was show this side by side. So here is my vacation, my ideal vacation. Here is a lookalike, looks similar. And by the way, here's the real-time price of what it takes me to go to that vacation compared to the much lower price of just taking a train there locally. This requires some AI, finding lookalike images, not easy, and an AI task. Figuring out in real time what the price is, again, a lot of real-time artificial intelligence. So this is a path to get started, and I think we can see a lot more of that creative, but it's still early on.
Yeah, I would just add to that, we've seen some examples of sentiment analysis with some big companies that before they'll do a major campaign, they'll actually use AI to actually predict the sentiment of consumers and whatnot and how they react. Recently, there was an example of a controversial ad campaign in the United States that actually saw an increase of $6 billion of market cap. And my understanding is that company used significant sentiment analysis using that. So once again, it's AI is not an end in itself, it's a tool.
Yep.
And that's the thing about technology. Always remember, it's a tool. It's only as good as the person who's using the tool.
So, and if I'm a marketer thinking about my personal career, how do you suggest I think about the different types of skills that I need to be successful in this emerging future?
So I'll be extreme for a second. I think the artificial intelligence revolution that is happening is going to be as extreme as the Industrial Revolution. It's going to change everything. If I was a carriage driver back then, being a better carriage driver was not really going to make it. I needed to make a drastic change. I think that's what's coming up with artificial intelligence in many areas. I think autonomous driving and other areas prove that. So as a marketer, I'll go back to, I need to figure out, am I the creative person, and really dive deep into creative strategies and how I can drive value, or I'm the data person, and then I can really drive value there, because with enough time, all of the in-between, I think, is going away.
Interesting. How about you? Any advice? Any advice you have?
Well, I think there's new languages that people need to learn more than just reading and writing in your different language. I think while a person doesn't need to be a professional programmer and familiar with AI, I think having a basic understanding of the language that's used, I think will help people learn how to solve problems. And that's what I would recommend for marketers, is that if you go into marketing to stay away from computers, you're probably going to be disappointed in a few years.
Interesting. Great. So I'd like to just end the conversation with a final question. If you were to think about what are each of your companies doing to prepare for the world of AI, and as a result, what can people in the audience learn about how they should think about how their company should evolve?
Well, first of all, we have a long-term roadmap that creates the basic technology for AI in our full roadmap that goes all the way into big data centers, all the way down to small devices, as I mentioned earlier on. That's just a part of it. The second part is we're actually helping create programming models and the ability for big providers and small providers to create solutions, to program applications and solutions on top of that that will be easier. That will, of course, enable a new version of innovation that marketers can take advantage of.
How about you, Eldad?
Can you repeat the question?
So if you could talk a little about the things that Taboola is doing to prepare for this AI future, and what are some companies can do to learn from this?
So we've been working in the artificial intelligence space for quite a few years, and deep learning in the last few years. And it's really changing everything that we're doing internally. When we look at how to look at data, how to look at campaigns, how to look at our own sales funnel, all of these can be enabled using artificial intelligence to really understand and analyze and optimize what is being done. So I would actually recommend to everyone to think about artificial intelligence as here and changing my world, and start implementing even at the very basic aspects of that. Build some machine intelligence into what you're doing, because if you don't, you're probably going to be overtaken by a competitor that does that.
Great. Fascinating conversation. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Eldad. And thank you all for being here today.
And this is what happens when I can't brief you before. Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you very much. And we'll be back in 2 minutes. Give us 2 minutes, and then we are talking about mobile and out of home. And we've got great speakers backstage already waiting. So stay in your seats. We are back in a minute.